December 11th, 1990. For the fourth time in 5 years, reputed mob boss John Gotti was under arrest. Wearing his handcuffs as cavalierly as he wore his $1,000 suits, Gotti, known as the Dapper Don by the press, was led off to jail. Arrested with him were 3 colleagues in Gotti's alleged mafia organization, the Gambino crime family, including Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano, Gotti's right-hand man. The Gambinos were the largest and most powerful of New York's 5 crime families. They controlled the New York garment district, had a hold on the waterfront through the Longshoremen's Union, and took huge kickbacks from the garbage and trucking industries. Prosecutors said Gotti had seized control of the family in a palace coup. They now charged him with engineering the murder of Paul Big Paulie Castellano, the previous Gambino chief. Big Paulie had died in classic mafia fashion, gunned down on a sidewalk in 1985 as he climbed out of his Lincoln to dine at his favorite Manhattan restaurant. It was Gotti, prosecutors said, who had sent out his gunman to do the job after getting the other New York families to approve the killing. If the charges were true, Gotti's betrayal of his boss was vicious and cold, but part of mob tradition. Aging mafia overlords had often been slain by impatient, ambitious underlings. But now Gotti found that he himself had been betrayed in a matter not sanctioned by mafia practice. Sammy the Bull Gravano had decided to rat on his boss. Faced with the possibility of life in prison, Gravano chose instead to deliver his mentor and godfather to the feds in exchange for a lighter sentence. After the trial, Gravano would be entered in the government's witness protection program, given a new identity, and protected by federal marshals. For the prosecutors, it was a fair trade. No other figure associated with the mob drew attention like John Gotti. Despite his impeccable grooming, his fashion-plate wardrobe, and his Mercedes-Benz, he had for years filed his income tax returns as a plumbing salesman. He had served a total of 8 years in prison, 2 of them for a barroom killing in 1968. He still lived in this modest home in Queens. With Gotti, life imitated art. The press had at last found a mob leader who fit the image set by Hollywood and the huge success of the Godfather films. Reporters tripped over one another to capture him on videotape. As the saying goes, the camera loved Gotti. And Gotti loved the camera, especially when it recorded him walking out of a courtroom a free man. This he had done 3 times to the frustration of government lawyers.
As to the defendant, John Gotti, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty of the first count of the indictment, charging him with the crime of conspiracy in the 4th degree?
We find him not guilty.
With each acquittal, Gotti got a little more famous and became a little more of a legend for winning his bouts with American justice.
Thank you.
Much of Gotti's success in the federal courts could be credited to his unflagging champion, the colorful defense attorney, Bruce Cutler.
It's not right what you're doing, singling people out and going after them, harassing them, using witnesses who lie, who say anything for money and a new identity. And I think people have just said it, enough.
Cutler helped Gotti earn a new nickname, the Teflon Don, because no charge could be made to stick. Once an unknown, Gotti became one of New York's best-known citizens. Camera crews even attended the July 4th picnics he threw for his whole Brooklyn neighborhood. Police had long since stopped bothering to enforce the New York law against private fireworks. But if any person could make the new charges stick to Gotti, it was Gravano. As Gotti's confidant and right-hand man, Gravano was privy to Gotti's secrets. And he was icing on the cake for the U.S. attorneys, who had spent the years since their last failure gathering hundreds of hours of audio recordings of Gotti's meetings and private conversations. Gravano was part of many of those discussions, including one where Gotti offered him the promotion of his choice.
You want me to make you official underboss, acting boss? How do you feel? What makes you feel better?
These conversations made Gravano the ideal stool pigeon. The very evidence against Gotti would shore up the credibility of the principal witness. As the trial approached, Gotti was deprived of another key ally, longtime defender Bruce Cutler. At a pretrial hearing, prosecutors played tapes in which Gotti described Cutler handling illegal deals.
You know and I know that they know that you're taking the money to the table. Every time you take a client on one of us on, you're breaking the law.
The U.S. attorneys insisted the tapes compromised Cutler's credibility in the courtroom. The judge agreed and barred Cutler from representing his most famous client. Little by little, the surveillance evidence against Gotti was whittling away his usual defenses. Cutler was furious.
I am just personally offended and angry, and I still cannot fathom that I will not be addressing this jury in this case.
In place of Cutler, Gotti hired renowned defense attorney Albert Krieger. And as he waited for trial, Gotti was said to be running the Gambino family from his jail cell. But this time, the deck seemed to be stacked against the man America had come to know as the Teflon Don. Even his 4th of July picnic went afoul when the annual fireworks display exploded all at once. It was as if Gotti's whole world was blowing up in his face.
Sammy the Bull Gravano was expected not only to tattle on his boss, but to act as a kind of mafia translator. Mobsters know the government will listen in on them, so they talk in a loose code, issuing orders for murder or massive drug shipments in language that could seem meaningless to a jury. The mob rat interprets the mafia jargon and maps out the bloody chain of command. This Gravano did, but like all mafia informers, Sammy the Bull was also a liability for the prosecutors. On the stand, he would implicate Gotti in 10 murders and admit to 19 himself. So the trick for the prosecution would be to prove that John Gotti was a killer, on the word of a professional hitman.
Modern mob prosecutions rely on a kind of 1-2 punch. The first blow comes from surveillance. The second is the stool pigeon. After almost a year in jail waiting for trial, New York Mafia underboss Sammy Gravano decided in November 1991 to turn on his boss, John Gotti, and testify for the prosecution. As part of the prosecution team, Patrick Cotter prepared Gravano for trial. He says Gravano had heard the most damaging pieces of the government surveillance tapes, and he believes Sammy turned, or flipped as the FBI calls it, because he saw he was going to be Gotti's fall guy.
What was John Gotti's defense at trial to all the murders? I didn't kill those people, Sammy did. Sammy smelled that coming.
At a secret midnight rendezvous with prosecutors, he struck a deal. In exchange for his complete cooperation, Gravano was guaranteed a maximum sentence of 20 years in jail.
There is no rational basis for the deal given to Gravano except that the government was hag-ridden and manically driven to obtain a conviction against Mr. Gotti. I realize that's a damning statement in certain respects, but I stand by it.
Al leaves out the fact that we didn't go to Sammy, Sammy came to us. Nobody went and cut some wonderful deal with Sammy Gravano. He was given a deal to give up everybody. This man was the head of a family with dozens and dozens and dozens of high-ranking, powerful members, all of whom deserved to be in jail for crimes ranging from murder to extortion to corruption.
Now under protection of federal marshals, Gravano fired his lawyer. Gotti defense attorney Albert Krieger got word and rushed to tell Gotti the bad news.
Mr. Gotti said, and I can quote him, he said, "Oh my," and in just about that tone, all the innocent people that man is going to hurt.
By the time the trial began in Brooklyn in January 1992, it was the hottest show in town. Judge I. Leo Glasser sequestered the jury to protect them from media exposure. He also ordered that they be kept anonymous to prevent tampering. The jurors went in and out of the courthouse behind the tinted windows of limousines. The deal with Gravano would be a waste if the jury was shocked by the stool pigeon's own crimes. In his opening statement, lead prosecutor Andrew Maloney had to tell the jury of Gravano's chilling mob resume, including involvement in 19 murders.
The first that I heard that he was a mass murderer was in Mr. Maloney's opening statement. So even though I knew that he was going to be a witness against Mr. Gotti, I had no idea of the scope of the testimony, or, in truth, the nature of the beast.
Gotti and his co-defendant, associate Frank Lacasio, were charged with racketeering, meaning a string of crimes that add up to a pattern of criminal behavior. Gotti himself was separately charged with 11 other crimes, which included ordering the murders of 3 low-ranking mafia gunmen. But the centerpiece of the case was the murder charge against Gotti for arranging the execution of his boss, Gambino godfather, Big Paulie Castellano. And when at last Gravano was brought in under the tightest security, that was the story with which he began his testimony. In his gravelly voice, Sammy the Bull told the court how he helped Gotti plan the murder. Paul Castellano, as head of the Gambinos, was the most important mafia boss in America. But by 1985, his grip on his family was slipping. His home had been bugged. He was under indictment on multiple charges. It was known in the underworld that Big Paulie had issued orders that any Gambino member involved in big drug deals would be killed. John Gotti had just been implicated in such a deal by the feds. Gravano told the court that in December 1985, Gotti decided to save his skin by killing Castellano, or in mob parlance, whacking him. Gotti arranged for Castellano to be called to dinner at his favorite restaurant on Manhattan's East Side.
Castellano felt he was the boss of the bosses. He wasn't worried too much. He just had the one bodyguard with him. They walked up, 4 guys came, they killed him. Wasn't complicated. They walked away, they disappeared in the crowd.
Gravano came across in the courtroom as calm and dignified, wearing a double-breasted suit, often putting on a pair of bifocals to look at evidence. It gave this confessed murderer the air of a studious businessman. Even Albert Krieger, famous for his penetrating cross-examination, couldn't break down Gotti's former number 2.
He was contained, articulate, not responsive as the angry, blustering, in some respects degenerate, I now know him to be.
Prosecutors know that when they put a criminal informer on the stand, they have to make all his crimes known. If he is caught in any deception, all his testimony is compromised, and the witness is rendered useless. This was especially true of Sammy the Bull.
Gravano is a self-confessed, admitted, vicious, cold-blooded serial killer.
I thought he did great. I think everybody who was there thought he did great, in the sense of they believed him. They didn't like him. They didn't like him at all. He's not a likable guy in a lot of ways. Well, in all ways, frankly.
Albert Krieger made sure the jury knew what kind of person Gravano was. He pointed out that Gravano's 19 murder victims outnumbered the 18 jurors and alternates. "We don't have enough chairs to put all the victims in," Krieger said.
The problem for the defense was that every time you show the jury what a truly bad person Sam was, you were in fact telling them John Gotti's best friend, heir apparent, best buddy, and the man he loves is a bad, bad man. You couldn't disassociate the two.
My mother always said, you lie down with dogs, you wake up with fleas.